Alright, what's up everybody? It's your boy Akeen and welcome to today's vlog. Continuing on with my 2014 college football previews. For today's vlog, I'm here to talk about the SEC Conference, the toughest conference in college football. Now before I begin with my blog, I have a couple of headline news headed towards this season. The quarterback position is going to be very key for some of the top teams of this conference because all five of the top five quarterbacks who led the league in passing efficiency are actually no longer part of their teams. Talking about Connor Shaw for South Carolina, Aaron Murray from Georgia, Zach Mettenberger from LSU, AJ McCarron from Alabama, as well as Johnny Manziel from Texas A&M. Now the quarterback battle is going to be pretty well and competitive this upcoming offseason, particularly with two teams for LSU and Texas A&M. Now for LSU, the battle is going to right now is between Brandon Harris and Anthony Jennings. Now I believe that Harris has the advantage over Jennings, but this is still an open battle. And for Texas A&M, the battle is between Kenny Hill and Kyle Allen. Now I believe that Kenny Hill's the more athletic quarterback, but he actually was arrested during this offseason and he's actually trying to play catch up at practice. So actually the edge right now belongs to Kyle Allen, but I still think that because of Kenny Hill's skill, I think he has a little bit better skill than Allen. So I think this is still Kenny Hill's job at the start of the season, but he still has been arrested, so he's to be dealing with a couple of off the field issues. Now a couple other headline news headed towards of this season for the SEC Conference. We have a new head coach for Vanderbilt, actually the Stanford defensive coordinator, and Derek Mason. He's going to replace James Franklin, who's no longer with the team. He is now the Penn State head coach. And last but not least, this is a defensive conference. Everybody knows most of these teams have great defenses, but the offense is actually starting to sprout up for the past couple of seasons, particularly last season for the Auburn Tigers, who led the nation in rushing yards per game with 328. And with that high, fast-paced offense, the defenses in the SEC Conference has been dwindling a little bit and actually drawing a little bit more confusion against that Auburn offense, particularly in that game against Alabama. Even though that was a last-minute second touchdown for the Auburn Tigers, they still played a great game offensively with that high-paced, fast offense. And now the defenses are actually a little bit kind of worried about, especially particularly Auburn. And I think that other offenses in the SEC Conference is going to go more for high, fast pace, just like Gus Malzahn's offense at Auburn. Now I have a couple of impact players for you guys headed towards this season, actually 8 altogether. Start at the quarterback position, Nick Marshall. Now during this offseason, just a couple of days just before the SEC Media Day, Nick Marshall was actually arrested for drug possession, and he's actually right now still waiting on the consequences from head coach Gus Malzahn. Now last season he had 1,976 yards passing, 14 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions to go along with over 1,000 yards, 1,068 to be exact, and he's another player that I'm looking for as a Heisman candidate at the end of the season. Second player I need to talk about, actually the next 3 players on the offensive side are running backs. Todd Gurley from Georgia, he rushed for just under 1,000 yards last season, 441 yards receiving, which shows that he draws another dimension at the running back position as a receiver. Now last season he's been dealing with a little bit of health issues, missed actually 3 games because of injuries, as well as he wasn't really fully healthy in 5 other games last season, but still had impressive numbers. He's going to be dealing with a little bit more of bulk of the carries because of the loss of Aaron Murray. So more of the ball is going to be placed in the hands of Todd Gurley. He's going to definitely have to step it up. Now, if he stays healthy, he should take a trip to New York at the end of the season. Next player I need to talk about who's been dealing with injuries, Mike Davis from South Carolina. Now, he rushed for over 1,100 yards last season, some touchdowns. I think he's a great running back, and I think if he stays healthy, he would definitely rush for over 1,500 yards this upcoming season. Now, they don't really have too much depth at running back at South Carolina as compared to Georgia, so Mike Davis is going to have to carry the load, but they do have an experienced quarterback in Dylan Thompson, who had over 1,000 yards in his career passing and enough experience to be a good starting quarterback in front of Mike Davis. Third quarterback need to talk about T.J. Yeldon out of Alabama, 1,235 yards rushing last season, 14 touchdowns. Now he's actually not expected to get as many yards as he did this year as he did last season because the emergence of of Derrick Henry, who weighs 238 pounds and averaged 10 yards per carry with just under 340 yards rushing last season. He impressed a lot of people, and because of his size and speed and that yards per carry, the ball's definitely going to be put more towards his hands, and I think he's going to be splitting more carries between him and TJ Yeldon. Plus, also Yeldon has been dealing with a little bit of fumbleitis. If he controls that fumbling problem, I think he will do well, and I still think he's an impact player because of his he has great reading of his blocks and great cutback ability. I think he's an outstanding running back, still an impact player. Now on the defensive side, I need to start off with Ole Miss's free safety, senior free safety, and Cody Prewitt, who actually led the SEC with 6 interceptions last season to go along with 71 tackles, and he definitely laid the smackdown and laid a good hit. Asked Jordan Matthews in that matchup against Vanderbilt, in which he caused Jordan Matthews to puke in that matchup. He has a great skill, and I think he's definitely an All-American at the end of the year. Next player I need to talk about from Georgia, an inside linebacker, and Ramik Wilson, who actually led the team with 133 tackles. Now they have a new coordinator in the defensive side, and Jeremy Pruitt, who should enhance Wilson's skills to be a more threatening and more frightening defensive linebacker for that defense for Georgia. I think that he's going to be a rude. Everybody's going to be more of a rude awakening for Wilson's play, especially with the introduction of Pruitt as a new defensive coordinator. Next player I need to talk about another inside linebacker, and Broderick McKinney out of Mississippi State. Now his numbers definitely slipped last season, but he still has a strong presence at the linebacker position, and the reason why his numbers went down a little bit is because of the change of position. Now he's actually entering his second year season, and I still think he's going to be an impact player headed towards this year. He should definitely make at least second team All-SEC honors at the end of the year, but I think he has a shot to wreak havoc and make it in the first team All-SEC at the end of the season. Last but not least, Vernon Hargreaves, the cornerback out of Florida. Now he was very impressive last season. 3 interceptions to go along with 11 pass breakups. Now he does need to raise up the tackling numbers a little bit better. 38 tackles last season, but he's definitely the best cover corner, one of the best cover corners entering this season, and I think he will be first team All-SEC at the end of the year, possibly an All-American. Breakthrough outperformers, starting with my #1 player from Alabama, Jacob Coker. Now he has great weapons around him and a great supporting cast, and I believe that because he has such great supporting cast around him, like Amari Cooper at wide receiver, T.J. Yeldon at running back, as well as Derrick Henry at running back, and a good offensive line, and the number one offensive tackle entering coming out of high school entering this season. I think that this is a key thing, and I will talk about the offensive tackle and Cam Robinson later on in today's blog. Second player I need to talk about at running back, Corey Grant out of Auburn. Now he averaged 9.8 yards per carry and rushed for over 600 yards. I think he's going to be an excellent replacement for Trey Mason, and Trey Mason is now with the St. Louis Rams, so this is definitely going to be Corey Grant's show. I think he will make All-SEC honors at the end of the year. Going for at the wide receiver position, Laquan Treadwell out of Ole Miss. Now he actually was third in the league in receptions last season with 72, with just over 600 yards receiving, and with the loss of Dante Moncroft, who is now with the Indianapolis Colts in the National Football League, this is definitely Treadwell's time to shine and be the leader at the receiving corps for the Ole Miss Rebels, who try to get over the hump and win the SEC West Division and make it to the SEC Championship. Next player I need to talk about at the receiver position, Malcolm Mitchell out of UGA, Georgia. Now he actually has 40 receptions off of Aaron Murray. He's a great wide receiver, but he's been coming back from a torn ACL surgery that he had during the offseason, and he's definitely a threat as a return specialist. I think this is a good year for him to make a comeback player of the year, performance this year. I think he's going to be due for an outstanding season, a good comeback year. Next player I need to talk about on the defensive side, Robert Nkemdiche out of Ole Miss. Now he's definitely already made first team preseason All-SEC honors entering this season, but he only had 34 tackles last season as a true freshman and the 2 sacks, which are good numbers at the defensive tackle position, but I expect the numbers to go up just a little bit and have a breakthrough performance and be a big time, possibly an award candidate at the end of the year. Next player I need to talk about, the 6th player, Alvin Bud Dupree out of Kentucky, he had 60 tackles last season, 9.5 tackles for loss, and 7 sacks. He should definitely break habit in that line of scrimmage. He also is a freak of nature. He actually jump leaps a 41-inch vertical leap at the defensive end position, as well as a 10-foot 7-inch broad jump. That means he has great legs. He can definitely extend the ball, cause a couple of pass breakups, and I think because that shows he has a little bit explosion coming off of the line of scrimmage, I think he could be due for an outstanding season, possibly an SEC candidate, an SEC Defensive Player of the Year at the end of the season. Now I have a couple other players I need to talk about. Trey Dupree, out of the linebacker out of Alabama. Now we all know how Alabama has a list of great linebackers like Ronald McClain, Dante Hightower, Upchurch, as well as C.J. Mosley, the Buckets Award winner last season. So this is definitely Dupree's time to shine at linebacker and continue on with the list, possibly become an All-American at the end of the year. And last but not least, at the free safety position, Dupree's teammate Landon Collins, who actually was second in the team with 70 tackles, despite only starting 9 games last season, and because he was a little bit overshadowed with Clinton Dix, who's no longer with the team, and as well as Vinny Sinceri. I still think this is going to be a great year for Collins. He should definitely possibly make an All-American candidate at the end of the year, and I do need to look at more of his ball skills and his cover skills. If he improves that, he should definitely possibly become a first-team All-American at the end of the season. Now I have a couple impact freshmen for you guys headed towards this year, 7 in total. Starting with my first player, Jalen Tabor, an early enrollee at cornerback for Florida. Now Florida is definitely in need of Tabor to step it up this season because they lost 3 players in the secondary, and Lachez Parafoy, Jalen Watkins, as well as Marcus Robinson. So they're definitely going to have Tabor to step it up this season. He should definitely start right away as a true freshman. I mentioned earlier Alabama's offensive line. They picked up the #1 offensive tackle in Cam Robinson. Now, hopefully he could be the replacement for Cyrus Quandro, who is now a Buffalo Bill, and this is his chance to shine, and he's already getting first-team reps as a true freshman. The next player I need to talk about, same team for Alabama, Tony Brown, the cornerback. He's actually the #2 cornerback coming out of high school according to the ESPN Top 300. Now, he definitely can start right away at the cornerback position because both cornerback positions are actually wide open for whoever to step it up and start for this team, and this could definitely be Tony Brown's job to lose at the cornerback position. But I still think he had a good spring practice, and I think he should start at least by week 3 of this season. Next player I need to talk about, Myles Garrett, the defensive end for Texas A&M. He's actually from the state of Texas, 6'5", 247 pounds. This is a big boy, and he has great pass rushing ability, and he can even drop back into coverage, which shows his little bit good versatility, and I think shows good athleticism, great skills, and I think he can make a run for defensive freshman of the year honors at the end of the season. Next player, Lorenzo Carter out of Georgia. He's actually the #1 player coming out of the state of Georgia, decided to stay in-state and play for the Mark Richt Bulldogs, and he's actually a good player, a good athletic player, not the prototypical 3-4 defensive end, but he has enough speed and athleticism to play both defensive end and outside linebacker as a true freshman. Next player I need to talk about, the last 2 players belong with the same team, the LSU Tigers, starting with their wide receiver, Malachi Dupree, actually from the state of Louisiana, and now with the loss of Odell Beckham as well as Jarvis Landry to the National Football League, this is definitely Dupree's job to take right away as a true freshman. And last but not least, the #1 high school player for this season, the #1 player in Leonard Fournette, out of the state of Louisiana, and I even draw comparisons to Adrian Peterson. He's actually the #1 player coming out of high school since Adrian Peterson, the best high school player since Adrian Peterson back in 2003-2004 year. But Adrian Peterson is an outstanding player. Obviously, he should be a Hall of Fame at the end of his career at the National Football League. And with Fournette already drawing comparisons to Peterson, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on him, and everybody definitely has their eyes on him as a freshman, as a true freshman. And this is actually a great opportunity for him to start start because Alfred Blue's no longer with the team. He's now with the NFL, and Jeremy Hill as well decided to leave early as juniors headed towards the National Football League, and he only has to battle things out with Kenny Hilliard as well as Terrence McGee at the starting running back position. And I believe at the end of the year, Leonard will be that starting running back headed towards the 2015 season at least, and I still think he has a chance of leading the team in rushing, possibly the Rookie of the Year offensively, Freshman of the Year offensively for the SEC Conference. Now, I have a lot of games to talk about headed towards this year. Pretty much every game in the SEC Conference is very important. This, especially when down to the trenches, down in the stretch of the end of the season. Now, starting with August 28th, Texas A&M is going to be playing at South Carolina. This is going to be a great matchup, especially I'm going to keep an eye out for Dylan Thompson. Hopefully, this could showcase his skills and show him how far he could go throughout the season with the start of the game against Texas A&M. September 13th, UGA is going to be playing at South Carolina. This could be the SEC East Championship pretty much early on in the season. And September 20th, Mississippi State is going to be playing at LSU. That's going to be a great game to watch. September 27th, Tennessee is going to be playing at Georgia, as well as Missouri is going to be playing at South Carolina. A couple of SEC East matchups for you guys. October 4th, Alabama is going to be playing at Ole Miss. LSU is going to be playing at Auburn, and Florida is going to be playing at Tennessee. Now this is when the games how business is really getting started in this season on October 8th. October 4th, actually October 11th, LSU is going to be playing at Florida. Auburn's going to be playing at Mississippi State. Mizzou's going to be playing against Florida. That's going to be a couple not Mizzou. Florida's going to be playing hosting LSU. October 25th, South Carolina's going to be playing at Auburn, as well as Ole Miss at LSU. A couple of SEC West division games to look at. November 1st, Auburn's going to be playing at Ole Miss. Florida's going to be facing Georgia, I believe, at a neutral site. November 8th, Alabama's going to be playing at LSU. November 15th, Mississippi State at Alabama, and South Carolina at Florida. And November 29th, the Egg Bowl between Ole Miss and Mississippi State, as well as the Iron Bowl between Auburn and Alabama. Now, I definitely had to name all those key matchups for you guys, and this is going to be very hard for me to determine, for me to predict who will win the SEC East, the SEC Championship, the East and the West Division, and who will be the SEC winner overall. But before I talk into that, first I want to give you my award winners at the end of the year, my predictions. Coach of the Year honors, I'm going to go with Steve Spurrier out of the South Carolina Gamecocks. I think because of the schedule, and I believe with the return of Mike Davis and the experienced Dylan Thompson, this is definitely his chance to win the SEC East Championship and win it and make it to the SEC Championship. Offensive Freshman of the Year, I'm going to go with Leonard Fournette out of LSU. I think he's going to be that starting running back at least midway through the season. Defensive Freshman of the Year, Myles Garrett out of Texas A&M, because of his size, and I think he could become the next good pass rusher for the Aggies. Remember Von Miller, he won the Buckets Award years ago, as well as Sean Porter, who was a good pass rusher for the Aggies. I think that this is Myles Garrett's job to take as a true freshman, and he could become that next great pass rusher for the Aggies. Offensive Player of the Year, I'm actually going to go with Todd Gurley from Georgia because of how important he will be in this offense, and with the loss of Aaron Murray, the ball is going to be put more towards Gurley's hands, and because he's such a great player as a receiver, I think he'd be a good all-purpose player, particularly even running the football in between the tackles. I think he will be the Offensive Player of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year award, I'm going to go with Renwick Wilson out of Georgia. I think he's going to have another great season, at least over 120 tackles this year. So I think this is going to be a Georgia thing with Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year. Now, the winner of the SEC Championship, I'm going to have to go with Alabama representing the West over South Carolina representing the East. Now, I think the East is going to be in a competitive, as well as the West is going to be competitive, but I think that South Carolina should get the edge in the East Division, and I still think because of all the talent and the recruiting class coming for Alabama, I still think they should be headed towards a great path, headed towards the SEC Championship representing the West, and I think that Nick Saban is going to win it all in the SEC Championship. Now, my sleeper of the year, I'm going to actually go with Gary Pinkel's Mizzou Tigers. Now, let's look at Matty Mock. He actually had over 1,000 yards passing last season, 10 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. And I still think he can manage that offense pretty well, even though they lost a lot of key players on the defensive side. I think that Gary Pinkel's going to surprise everybody. And he even surprised everybody last season in making it to the SEC championship. And I think that Matty Mock could be a good sleeper for Player of the Year of the SEC Conference. A good sleeper. He had a decent year behind James Franklin, but when he stepped up, when he had his time to play, he did step it up and had a couple of good games, a couple of close games, and even in the SEC championship, Mizzou was actually close against Auburn until Auburn pulled it away at the end of the season. So I'm going to have to go with Mizzou Tigers for SEC Sleeper of the Season. Now, the next time I'm going to catch you guys will be tomorrow, where I'm going to continue things on with my previews with the Big 12 Conference. Thank you for watching today's vlog. From Pro Football Exclusive, I'm your man, Akeem McCall. Be easy.